Okay, I'm going to show you how to alter your pattern for a forward rolling shoulder. So a forward rolling shoulder means that the shoulder cap, it's kind of rounded and moves forward a little bit. It means that from arm side to arm side in the front, it's a little bit narrower. And because the shoulders roll forward a little bit, the back is a little bit longer. And also it changes this, the center of the sleeve cap. It moves forward because the shoulder moves kind of forward. So it affects all three pattern pieces: bodice front, bodice back, and sleeve. So, and if you look at the pictures in the PowerPoint, you can see how nice it looks to actually take out these wrinkles. So when you're trying something on, if you've got wrinkles that kind of start here and go up on both sides, then it's because this is too big here because your shoulders rolled forward a little bit. So the first thing you're going to do is, usually on a fitting garment, you kind of figure out exactly where this rolling, like the wrinkle that's affected by this. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a wrinkle. And because I don't have a real wrinkle, I'm just going to draw one here. And I'm going to pretend that this wrinkle, I'll do the middle of the wrinkle, and it kind of goes here, let's say. Okay, so there's my wrinkle. So what I might actually do, often it comes up a little higher. Okay, so there's my wrinkle. So what I've done is I've pinched out this fabric, and then after pinching it out, it's usually widest here, and then it kind of comes down in like this. So you kind of pinch this out, and then it kind of comes in. Okay, so let's say that's your wrinkle, and you've pinched it out, and you've stitched it. On a fitting garment, we stitch this so that we can figure out how much excess fabric we have here. Okay, once we get that, then the next thing you're gonna do is you're going to draw a grid. Okay, and so like here's the middle of the wrinkle, you can see by those lines. And so if I line this up and I draw a grid, and I'm going to draw it to the seam line. Okay, I'm gonna go to the middle, and about every inch or so, I'm going to draw another one. Okay, and then this kind of goes like that. And then let's do some more here, like right here. And then let's go up here, and that goes here. Okay, so what this tells me is that at this spot here, I need to take out 0. But by the time I get here, I need to take out this much. So I might do one in between, just to kind of help a little bit. And so once I draw that to my seam, that will help me to know how much to take out. I'm gonna put one here too. So that, think of it as almost like an arrow, like it's saying, let me explain another way. With taking out this wrinkle, that means obviously I can't just take a garment I'm sewing and put a big tuck here, like I can a fitting garment. What that means is whatever I pull out here, I have to take out here on the edge at the seam allowance. So this just helps me to know how much to take out here corresponds to this much here. And how much to take out here corresponds to that kind of tuck right there. Okay, so after I get that, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut through here. Okay, so let me get some of this extra. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. This is about where your notch is at. So I slash right into my seam allowance. So I'm using the seam method. So I take off the seam. So I come up here like that to the corner, and then I go right to here, and then I am going to, remember we have to hinge at the corners, okay? All right, and I'm going to do a little bit more hinging because obviously I'm gonna need to. Now remember, you hinge from you cut through your cutting line and you hinge at your seam line because it's your seam line that you want to maintain, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and I'm going to bring this in. So like from here to here. So if I take right here and I measure this, that's about 3/8. Okay, so then 3/8 means that that needs to come in to about here. Okay, so if you come in here to 3/8, now that also means like right here, let's look at that. Let's look at this line. That one is about 1/4. So I'm gonna come up here to 1/4 and I'm gonna put a dot. And then this kind of ends up close to there. So basically, see how much, so can you see how this line corresponds to this? So that amount I need to take off here on this, at this seam. So I'm going to bring that down to about here. Now, obviously my lines are gonna be off because I'm taking some of it off, but I'm not looking at my lines in the seam allowance, I'm looking at the lines here on the garment. Okay, so I bring that down to about there. And then, let me mark some more of these. So that one is like a little less than 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna, that's about like 7 or 7/16 kind of thing. So that's about here. Okay, and you can see now that's quite a bit still. So that's gonna need like more like there. And then this starts to back off. Okay, so that kind of shows me where I need this to be. Okay, now if I bring that down to here, I don't really want to change my shoulder. I mean, I could change the length of my shoulder, but let's just see what it looks like if I kind of bring that in like that. Okay, I'm going to put this on some cork and pin it so you can see how I do that. Okay, so here I'm gonna pin it. That's why we have these cork boards, so let's use them. Okay, so I brought that down to meet this one. It's a little bit over that where it should be 0, but I'm not too worried about that. Except actually, if I bring that in, see, you can't really round this like the way this is. So you pretty much have to keep this straight still, but you can kind of bring that in. And then when I come over here, I can start to bring that in to meet this. And see, with all these hinges, I'm able to kind of meet that up here. And then this starts to come out and then ends up like that. So you can see, okay, so now the only thing is I'm taking a little bit out of here, but if I take this and shorten that shoulder seam, it's not gonna match up to the back too well. So I'm just gonna by bringing it down and bringing this over, I think I've got that pretty good. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is tape that. Now, I just kind of made this up, this wrinkle, but I hope you understand that if you're fitting somebody or yourself, I mean, if this is the tuck that we took in your fitting garment, because of the excess fabric, then that's where you get these lines from. Okay, I think we've got it. Now I'm gonna put a little bit more tape here along the seam. There we go. Okay, and you want to make sure your pattern is nice and flat. Okay, and see I have a little bit of extra here. So I'm just gonna put in a little bit of paper here so you can see where some of that extra is coming from. Okay, so it does get a little bit longer here, but keep in mind I also brought it down here a little bit. And then I'm going to put this in the corner because you got to build your corner back out for your seam allowance. So let's remember your pattern rules. We got to take care of any of these lines here. And also, what I'm going to do here, this is kind of the corner here. So I'm going to redraw that. Okay, and you can see how much that came in. It came in this much, so I took that off. So let's get rid of that. Okay, all right. So there is what the front, I should label this. This is what the bodice front looks like. Okay, now you've got two other pattern pieces that this affects. Okay, first of all, this dot came forward. So let's look here and see how that affected the back. Now remember we said that the back, it's a little bit, it's longer because if this seam is coming forward, then this has got to go this has got to go up to match this to go up. So basically at the top of your shoulder where the dot is, it's moved forward because your sleeve, your shoulder joint has moved forward. So what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna take a little bit of this off, it's easier to work with. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut, go straight in to the seam, and then we're going to cut up along the seam at the seam line. So remember, this is the seam method. So we come over here, we're gonna go up to this corner. Okay, and then we're gonna hinge at this corner. And we're gonna hinge at this corner. Okay, so let's put some paper in here. Okay, and then we'll put some of this here. Okay, so because the front, that dot moved forward, and we could even measure that and say, okay, that moved forward almost 3/8. Okay, so that means, okay, now, see what happened here? That happens. So you know what you do? You just put on a piece of tape and cut it again. So I'm glad that happened. So you know not to get too worked up about that. So I'm just gonna re-cut that and slash that from this side. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we're gonna go in here like that, and I'm going to lift this up. Okay, which means I've got to, so I'm going to go ahead and pin this. So pin this here, and then lift this up about 3/8, which is how far forward that seam allowance went. So about right there. Okay, and I'm going to pin that. So you want to pin everything to get everything nice and smooth. Okay, and then you want to bring this in because I don't want to make my back wider. So bring that back in to match up here. And then you'll need just a little piece of paper here to kind of fill in that. Okay, all right, so let's tape that down. Okay. Okay, let's put one more piece right here. Okay, and then do we have any lines? well, this will just kind of go there, and then let's do that one. And then your dart. Now you want to make sure your dart legs are the same. So let's measure. So this to here is about 3 5/8 if we say here. So that's 3 5/8. And then if we go over here, to get that the same, it's got to end here. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit so that those dart legs are the same. Now I've got a fat felt pen, so you can't tell, but if you go to the inside of that. Okay, so there's the back. Okay, so just so you know that, see how this moved forward, and see that moved forward. Okay, now let's look at the sleeve, okay? So that means if I've moved the sleeve cap, the shoulder seam forward and the bodice front, let's put bodice back here. And if I've moved the dot up a little bit on this one, then I've got to change the sleeve, all right? So to change the sleeve, okay, this one is a little trickier. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to get some of this extra paper off because it makes it a little bit trickier. Okay, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slash in here about at the notch, and I'm going to follow this up. Again, it's the seam method, so we're cutting off the seam allowance. Okay, and we're going to go over to about this notch. So let's stop there, okay? Then the next thing I'm going to do is, oh, and I want to make sure, see there's the dot. I just want to make sure the dot is there so I can tell. Okay, so now I am going to start doing some hinging, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to hinge actually quite a bit because I really have to reshape this. And the only way to reshape it and keep it the same length is to keep your seam allowance intact and just hinge all along here. So this is one of those alterations. They're a little bit tricky, but once you've done it, piece of cake. And you'll be glad you did, because it really does make a difference. So let's see here. Okay, okay, that's a lot of hinges, but here we go. Let's put it back together. Okay, so because we moved the dart, and so we have to move this dot. See, we moved forward, this goes forward. So I'm going to put some paper underneath here, some filler paper, so I have it. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin this. And then I'm going to move this forward, my 3/8. Okay, so let me measure. And that is good. And now I've got to make this flat. So let me get this. So what I'm going to do is this kind of starts to come up a little ways. And so I just let that kind of start to come up. So I start down here, and you have to overlap these outer edges. Okay? And you start kind of gradual, and I just want to kind of start to move those. And then I try to bring that back in. So it kind of goes like that. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now this one, we've got to try and follow follow the same, I'm out of pins, okay. Well, just go ahead and follow this, and follow that, okay? So that looks pretty good. So I think I can go ahead and start taping. Let me get this kind of closer. There we go. So I'm going to tape that. And I'm going to tape that. See how I followed that? Good. Okay. And then let's go ahead and tape this down. And we've been able to gradually go back down to 0. But okay. All right. So I'm going to take these out. And I'm going to put some, because of the cutting line, I'm actually going to put some tape on this outside edge. So when I cut through it, it kind of keeps it intact. All right, so there, and then, oh, look at that. The way I put my paper in, I need a little piece right there. How about we just put that in there like that? Okay, there we go. And so this, so if you look at this, I have added this much to my seam allowance right here. So when I do this, but at the same time, so I have made this seam just a little bit longer by this much, but usually you can work that in because of the way it goes. And this becomes my new dot. See right here? That's my new shoulder dot. And the cutting line is like, it kind of goes like that. So it kind of goes out, but if a person's arm, instead of having their shoulder cap here, it kind of rotates in. Oh, getting that. And so instead of having the middle of it here, the middle of their arm, it rotates in a little bit so the middle of their arm moves. So anyway, there you have it. Forward rolling shoulder alteration.